Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. So I'm here at the Loves in Greenup, Illinois, and we're actually I did a little home time. My daughter had a play and we were delivering close by my home, so my trainee and I went to my house and we went and saw the play. I actually went twice because it was Saturday and Sunday, and we didn't need to leave till later in the evening on Sunday. We picked up a load at Hershey in Stewart's Draft, Virginia. We've already delivered that over to Edwardsville, Illinois. I believe my trainee now has her 30,000 miles. I'm pretty sure she does at this point. But we are trying to get through Springfield so she can get her TWIC card on the way to taking her back out to where she lives, out west. And so we got a load out of Edinburgh, Indiana. That's going to go out to the West Coast, and I'll probably have to deliver that first, then get a load out of Southern California and drop her off closer to her home up north. So, and then I don't know where I'm going after that. I got some interesting news about trainees that I'll share in another video. But anyway, so we're here in Greenup, and I'm actually hoping to get a trailer tire changed. I got a piece of tread, not the whole thing down to the casing, but just like the ridged part about this much that's come off like one section, like one little skinny piece. So I still got plenty of rubber on the tire, it just doesn't have the little lines in it. So I called RA and they're like, yeah, get it replaced, but of course this place only has like one guy and they close at 11, and so I'm not optimistic about getting a call to replace that tire. And actually, really all I need them to do is pull the spare out. Like, they wouldn't even have to put a tire on a rim, they could just pull the spare out. My trailer's empty, so if I can't get it fixed here, I probably, it is roadworthy, otherwise I wouldn't have driven it here from the drop-in hook we did. But I'll go over, pick my load up, and just stop back on my way west, see if I can get it changed when it's a little when they got some more help tomorrow. So anyway, that's my story on how I got to Greenup. So I wanted to mention, Greenup's actually named after a guy named William C. Greenup, who was one of the surveyors for the National Road, and he platted out Greenup in 1834. And he was one of a number of surveyors who did this. He only did the portion from like Marshall, Illinois to Vandalia, which doesn't seem like a big distance if you look at it on a map and thinking that you could drive it. But that would have probably been, because we're talking about an area that really, in 1834, really wasn't that developed. And the idea that we were going to put a road all the way across the country, at least the country as we knew it, was a big deal. It was to enhance commerce and allow people to be able to travel greater distances with ease. So all these surveyors that did this work, they were kind of out here, creating something new. It wasn't like they were surveying land that had already been, like, there's a road on it and they just got to build a highway interchange or something. They were starting from scratch. So it was a pretty big deal. Now it doesn't seem like it. US 40, nobody takes US 40 to drive all the way across the country, but it was a big deal. And if you look at a lot of the roads in America, they run often very parallel to major interstates. For instance, US 30 runs pretty parallel, and in some places very close to I-80. Like out in Nebraska, they're side by side, and in Wyoming, they're the same road. It wouldn't surprise me to learn that I-80 was actually put part of it was built on what was the original US 30. So same thing with 70 and 40. You know, I'm sure there are other examples you could come up with of roads like that. You know, we talked about like the US 6, you know, runs like where 70 is in Utah and stuff. The Grand Army of the Republic Highway. So anyway, that's a little bit about Greenup. Not a lot of other noteworthy stuff here in Greenup. It's just a town out in farm country. But anyway, so have you ever noticed, you know, truckers have different levels of skill. And, you know, some people are good at some things, some people are good at others, right? Like, we all have strengths and weaknesses. But have you ever noticed a trucker who looks like he or she, but mostly he, has never been in a truck, actually? And I spoke about a guy one time who, he was probably Pakistani dude. He didn't know how to get he had to unhitch from his trailer and could not get, like when we were at a shipper, and he had to unhitch and pull out, and he couldn't get it back together, like without getting help from me. Like, he came over to my truck and asked me for help. Like, he didn't understand how any of that stuff really worked. He didn't understand how, you know, if you got the landing gear too high, it won't latch. You know, it's like, you got to do this, you got to do that. You know, I was like showing him and explaining it. And I watched a guy recently, I was talking to my trainee about this earlier. I watched a guy recently who was backing in a truck stop. But it was obvious to even a casual observer that this guy had no clue how to get a trailer to go where he wanted it to go. And so he was backing. He was quite a ways across the truck stop from us, but I could see that he was backing right towards the hood of a parked truck. And then I was like, he's gonna hit that truck. Well, then he finally stopped, and I saw somebody walking towards him. He finally stopped and then just did a U-turn into a pull-through spot. And I often see people come into truck stops even when it's clear they're going to stop for the night, and they won't back into a parking spot. They'll basically create a truck parking spot by paralleling themselves with somebody else that's already on the end, and I feel like it's because they can't back in. Like, they have no clue how to get this thing into that slot. And you see it on the road. Like, you'll see guys that are flying by you going like 80 miles an hour. Then all of a sudden, it starts to rain. Starts to rain hard. What's the next thing you see them doing? 40 miles an hour with their flashers on, right? Meanwhile, a guy like me who's used to driving in inclement weather, I'm just like, okay, I'm going the 60 or 65 I was doing, just like always, you know? Or you'll see the guy that, you know, you see people that like apparently have never seen snow in their lives. So I often wonder about that, but when I lived in Illinois years ago, I knew about a big scandal at the Secretary of State's office where some people got accused of basically selling CDLs. And so a story I just read, just came out in Texas. A guy was indicted along with some other people who had bribed him, but he was accepting $1,000 for he was a CDL examiner. So people would, you know, he would go out, get in their truck, and they maybe like drive around the block, and he'd come in and be like, okay, yeah, they passed. And it was kind of funny because like this went on for quite a while. And this guy accepted $215,000 in bribes. Now, the other thing that was interesting to me is that this guy is 68 years old. Now, I know that people that are in their 60s are not necessarily immune to committing crime, but I would have thought that a guy this old, you know, that's a government employee, like he might already have a pension and, you know, he would have retired to La Boca Chica or South Padre Island or whatever. But no, 215 licenses were issued to people that he accepted $1,000 bribes for. And it was, you know, that's a lot of people from just one guy. Because I feel like this happens a lot, actually. And when I say a lot, I don't mean like millions of truck drivers, but I think there are certainly probably in the tens of thousands of truckers on the road that got their license with bribery. And I'm not going to point fingers at any states other than Texas, obviously. I mean, they eventually caught up to this guy somehow. I'm not going to point any fingers. Some states are known as not having very rigorous testing, and you know, some people know. And let me preface, because I'm going to tell you what information I got about the people, right? But let me preface this by saying that I don't necessarily think this is that the information about the people necessarily means that they couldn't have done it correctly. Doesn't mean all of these guys are bad truck drivers. Maybe some of them had experience in other places and, you know, then got a CDL. Or, you know, there's, I mean, like my trainee Paul that was on my truck, he had a CDL years ago. I mean, my level of instruction for him was pretty basic. It was more like, here's how you get paid at Prime. You know, that was the gist of it. But so here's the breakdown. 215 people, 197 of them were Cuban nationals. Now here's the reason that number jumped out at me, the Cuban number, was because if you remember the guy who recently had a sentence reduced from like 180,000 years to like 10 years in Colorado, that guy was a Cuban national that came to this country to work. He obviously didn't know how to slow a truck down going down a mountain. That would probably be somebody that never got training, and maybe his employer. And here's the other thing. A lot of these people probably didn't even know that this guy was being bribed. That's the other thing, that's because it was the companies paying the bribes. It was some trucking companies and some other individuals paying the bribes. So it wasn't like guys just showed up with $100 bills and gave it to him and he gave him a license. I think a lot of these people didn't even know that they were part of a huge bribery scheme, and that how they got their licenses isn't the right way. Because why would they know necessarily? But 197 Cubans, 11 U.S. citizens, 1 Dominican national, 1 Ethiopian, 1 Iraqi national, 1 Ukrainian, 2 Mexicans, and then this was interesting to me because this just points up the ignorance of the person that was writing the article, though. And he was like 1 Puerto Rican national. I'm like, where the fuck do you think Puerto Ricans live? A Puerto Rican national is U.S. citizen, okay? Sorry, man. It goes in the 11 category, so it should have been 12 U.S. citizens, okay? Anyway, 215 people. It just makes you wonder. A lot of people are out here paying their dues, going through the process, doing it right, and you got, and again, I am not blaming these drivers. I don't know that any of them actually knew that this guy was going to pass them no matter how bad they screwed up. Like, no, you know, I mean, I guess if they killed a pedestrian or something stupid like that, he would have flunked them. But I think a lot of them probably got off his truck and they're like, damn, that was easy. I thought this was a hard thing to do. So anyway, it's just, you know, it's not just truckers and it's not just people from, you know, other countries. Because like I said, there were 12 people that were U.S. I caught it. U.S. citizens. But it just points up the dangers of the industry and the trucking companies that are willing to cut corners and not play by the rules and stuff. So I don't know, maybe next time when I see a guy that clearly can't back a truck, I'm just like, hey, did you go to a truck driving school? Or I'm just curious, like, how'd you get your license? And maybe he's like, oh, this guy hired me and he sent me down to this office and I drove around the block and they gave me my license. So anyway, be safe out there, drive defensively, keep your eye on the other guy, and yeah, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.